Back at it again, another episode of the Club Dub podcast presented by SportsMockery.com. What a week for the NFL, a crazy NFL playoffs. We got a retirement of the greatest quarterback of all time. We got a new regime here in Chicago, and we got a quarterback ready to play for our city and ready to lead under this new regime. Exciting time for Bears fans. We're going to break it all down for you. And we're going to bring you parts of the press conference if you missed it this week. Poles and Eberflus both introduced to the Chicago media on Monday. So we got highlights, clips, and all that and more. Again, we are the Club Dub podcast presented by SportsMockery.com. Eric and Drew, what's happening, guys? Crazy, crazy week. How's everything going?
Absolutely insane. I mean,
Yeah.
I felt it was just going to be pretty much early on the Bears stuff that we were going to cover, and then they were going to, shift into the Super Bowl stuff like they always do, and then two bombs get dropped on the same day. So it's never boring with the NFL.
No, it isn't. It's been just what Eric called it, absolutely insane, and just wow. I mean, all sorts of news, amazing games, retirement of a legend, bombshell, possible controversy, with the NFL. I mean, it's coming from all sides.
Yeah, and two of these bombshells that we heard today are two things that are going to affect the next, forever of the NFL. I mean, looking at the NFC picture and looking at a guy like Tom Brady retiring, that's going to completely shape and change the entire outlook of the National Football League for the next however long until these next quarterbacks begin to take their next steps. And then obviously with Brian Flores, we'll talk about that as we get into the show, but a massive step towards potential change in the NFL. I don't know. It's likely not going to be easy, and we've already seen the NFL come out and deny these allegations. Brian Flores is suing the NFL a class action lawsuit over his firing and claims that he was fired because of racial reasons and other things. There's a ton more in there. It goes beyond that, but we'll talk about that as well. But first and foremost, this is a Bears podcast. We're going to kick things off with Bears news. As we do every couple of years here in Chicago, we have a new regime. It's the Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus era. Both guys took the podium on Monday. I thought Ryan Poles was fantastic. For a guy who's 36 and who's never had this job before, he seemed like a guy who's ready to learn on the job and not kind of stick into his own, this is the way I do it, this is the way I'm going to do it. He seemed to be ready to adapt on the fly. Matt Eberflus might take a little bit more time for Bears fans to get used to, myself included. A lot of Jim Boylenisms in there. I'm not drawing comparisons, just a lot of football guy coach speak. But again, this is the first press conference. We're going to let things play out on the field. What did you guys think?
Both guys come across the same way in terms of they know exactly what they want their team to be, and it seems to coincide with each other, which is why they probably clicked in the first place. They want a tough, physical, fast, and smart football team, and those are a lot of things that the Bears just haven't been for the past several years. So to hear them say those things and to have a clear identity in mind, something that we've been pining for a long time, it was really nice to hear. Poles, he came across as self-assured, confident in himself, intelligent, obviously, but also malleable, somebody who is willing to listen, willing to take critiques without, letting his ego get in the way. And that's absolutely vital if you're going to be a successful GM in this league. And for him to have all this perspective at 36 years old is actually pretty remarkable when you think about it. As for Eberflus, I understand why a lot of people are having trepidations about the way he spoke to the media and whatnot. But if nothing else, he has a philosophy and he has a plan on how to implement that philosophy. And that's more than I could say for Matt Nagy for most of his tenure as Chicago Bears head coach. So at least there's that to work off of. And then we're going to see what happens if players buy into it. And given what happened in Indianapolis with that defense and how hard they played, how well they played, it's something that you think would probably work.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think Poles, first of all, extremely impressive, very confident, knows exactly what his vision is for the Bears, articulated it well, definitely made the offensive line a focal point, which I thought is important. And to Eric's point, I think it's true. They did have a very, symmetrical view of what the Bears should be as far as an identity goes. So it's good. I mean, they said all the right things. Hopefully they're able to identify, scout, and draft and acquire those players that actually fit that identity. So that'll be the next challenge. But everything they said from an identity standpoint is stuff that I'm a fan of. For Eberflus, He grew on me a little bit as the press conference went on. I think he showed command of a locker room, right? I think he showed the ability to be a good leader. And the fact that he said that he's not going to be calling plays on defense kind of compounded that CEO type of role he wants to play as Bears head coach. So I thought that married well. We'll see how it plays. I mean, I think he said in a separate, press appearance later on that his hits methodology is not necessarily for everybody, and maybe that'll weed out whatever Bears aren't supposed to be Bears. But it'll be interesting to see how it works in practice. But as far as those two being on the same page and having that identity, I thought that came through pretty well.
I've never been in an NFL team-based locker room. I've never played football. I've never been on that type of level of play. I was a former athlete, but it just seems to me with grown men playing the sport that they do and hearing a guy say, get out your track shoes and we're going running and we're going to be a fast and competitive team, and a guy who wants to implement this hits thing, it seems really cheesy to me. I have a hard time believing a lot of these guys are going to buy in, but who knows? Again, this is me, an outsider perspective here. I just don't see it working. And when I heard him I'm going to play a clip here from Eberflus talking about his philosophy and how he wants to build this roster and how he wants it to perform, I just have a hard time believing that maybe he's just doing it for a media standpoint. I don't know, but either way, it's strange. Let's hear from the head coach, Matt Eberflus, on his HITS, his hits philosophy.
And it's not for everybody. Believe me, it's not for everybody. There's been players that once in a while, hey, this is not for me. Okay, we can work things out, but it's going to be hard. It's going to be difficult. Okay, but it's going to be worth it.
How do you explain the difference between hustle and intensity?
Yeah, so the hustle part is actually the how we're working to the ball or blocking on the backside as a receiver, and how we're doing working down the line, offensive lineman going down the field to get an extra block. That's all hustle. Intensity is measured by hitting and physical style. Number one, the physical side of it, and then intensity is also measured by mental focus. Are we operating the right way? Do we have under 5 mental errors per group per game? That's pretty good if you can pull that off, as being a coach yourself. Yeah. So there's two things there. So yeah, that's how you measure them.
So I've been here long enough that it goes back to the Lovie Smith days, and when Rod Marinelli, you talked a little bit about today, as one of your mentors, was also here in Chicago. How do you explain what a loaf is? Because isn't that something that you used to?
Yeah. Well, there's a few ways. I'll just give you a few of them. So, going full speed, not full speed, is one of them. Getting passed up by another player. So if you get passed, like you and I run into the ball, I pass you up, or you probably pass me up. But that's another one. And not finishing to the pile, not finishing physical at the pile. That's another way we measure it. So, but there's a couple more than that, but it's a big part of what we do.
So a couple of those coaches I just named, they had a lot of success here defensively. How much in what is your defensive philosophy goes back to some of that success that fans here in Chicago would know well, be able to relate to?
Yeah, a lot of it goes back to that. We're all about upfield pressure defense, creating negative plays for the offense, and then getting takeaways. We're going to be a zone match. And we'll play some man, and we did that, we've done that before. But it's going to be all about the takeaways and being physical.
So there you have it. Matt Eberflus kind of breaking it down for us there and what he means by hits. I don't know. I catch myself listening to that, and I catch myself kind of zoning in and out, and I wonder if that's going to stick with some of these players. I honestly don't know. It's going to be we're going to see a lot of personnel change on the defensive side of the ball, just for the sole fact that we're changing schemes completely. I mean, it's going back a couple of years, as we heard him talk about Rod Marinelli and the Tampa 2 and how the Bears they're going to go back to that, which is smart. I appreciate a guy buying into a system that he believes in and it's his, and this works for me and this is what we're going to do. I like that. That makes me feel good. The cheesy cliche coach speak, I know a lot of NFL coaches do it. I don't know. I wish it was more to the point and made a little bit more sense. It did make you sound kind of like a dope.
I mean, you say that about Eberflus, but I remember Bill Belichick has a saying of his own that he always hammers home with his own players, which is do your job. Everybody's heard this at this point in some, highlight one or another. So it's really not all that different. The key is what you said in that Eberflus buys into it. Hook, line, sinker. When the guy at the top buys into something that strongly and continues to hammer it home to his players that if you buy into this, if you believe in this, we're going to win football games, they'll start to come around on it, especially when you start seeing results as they did in Indianapolis. So yes, there's probably not going to be some players on the current roster that buy into what he's going to be selling, which is probably why those players aren't going to be around very long. And he's going to go out and get his own players who do buy into that philosophy. So that's the whole part of what Ryan Poles' job is going to be in all of this, finding those players and then getting them all on the same page and pulling in the same direction.
That's exactly right. And this kind of goes back to what we were talking about in our little group chat earlier is this turnaround job the Bears have is, first of all, they have to match or find players that are able to be coached up in this hits manner and be the identity that Poles and Eberflus want to bring into Chicago. The challenge is going to be they don't have a lot of resources. They have $43 million in cap space. They have like 30 free agents or something like that. Mm-hmm. They have other players that were considered key, still under contract, but you don't have a really easy out for them. Someone like Khalil Mack, someone like Robert Quinn, Cody Whitehair, Jimmy Graham. I mean, even he's going to have some residual cap space. So they have pretty decent constraint in terms of cap space and the amount of players, just sheer number of players they need to acquire to fill out a roster. And then you have only 5 draft picks. So it's going to be very challenging as to how they do this turnaround. But to Eric's point, there is going to be significant turnover because you have, you're implementing a 43 defense now. You need a different type of linebacker other than Roquan Smith. You need a different type of defensive tackle other than, well, really anybody that's currently under contract. They have a lot of changes to make. So it'll be very fascinating. It'll be a very high turnover offseason. This roster is going to look very, very different. I just hope that they do 2 things. One, the investment starts to go towards the offense, like every NFL team really should be these days. And then the second piece is I hope they are very, very good and they're able to find those diamonds in the rough in the undrafted free agent market, 7th round, ascending, young but not quite superstar free agent that is ascending, like Ryan Pace was doing early in his career here in Chicago. So I hope they're able to execute that well because that will kind of shorten their time to relevancy back again.
And listen, I think something that kind of went under the radar for a lot of fans and writers in general was the fact that they allowed Justin Fields to speak after these two were introduced on Monday. And I pointed it out in our chat. This is an important step because they recognize how important he is, and not saying that Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace didn't understand how important Fields was. They said it over and over again. They just didn't know how to build around it. They were stuck in their scheme and their system. What I've heard now from Ryan Poles consistently is, look at what we did with Pat Mahomes. We found we looked at what he did well, which is a lot of things. We're not saying Fields is going to be that, but we looked at what he did well, and we were able to go and buy pieces around him, and nothing was ever enough. We built an O-line in one off season, and he's made points. We'll talk about this in a little bit. He's made points that the Bears' offensive line is not good, and that they're going to be significant upgrades and a lot of turnover. And I think that likely mean the goodbye of guys like James Daniels, and I know Cody Whitehair is still under contract, but who knows? I think we'll see offensive line draft picks early and often in this draft, and potentially maybe even more than that. But that's what needs to happen. This is an offensively driven football. It's an offensively driven league. If you have an offensive line and you believe in your quarterback, that's huge. And I really that was the most important part for me was Fields speaking after that press conference and both of them saying, "This is the guy," but not fully committing either. They weren't all cards in like he's our guy, but they were ready to build around him and talk about what he needs. And I think that's really important.
No question. I mean, they can't buy fully into Justin Fields yet because they haven't worked with him. Exactly. So this is a feeling out period right now. What we know for the most part is that Poles likes Fields. He liked him coming out of Ohio State. He liked the talent, all that sort of stuff, which is a good thing because you want that in your GM because that means the GM has a good idea of what Fields might be able to do and how to build around him. So I believe they are confident that they can get Justin pointed in the right direction, but they need to make sure they understand what he does well and then see if they can find the necessary pieces to get around him. And I think the biggest vote of confidence was the hire for the offensive coordinator, Luke Getsy, because when you look at his background of the type of offense he has worked in, the type of offense he has run, like at Mississippi State, it would fit Justin perfectly. So when you bring in somebody like that, that's a full-blown commitment without coming right out and saying it, that we believe we can help Justin get where he needs to go. So I'm confident that they believe in Justin. It's just a question of formulating that plan to take those steps to get him to where he needs to be.
Yeah, I want to tie what Eric just said to this comment right here from Eden. I wish they went into more detail on the plan for Fields. He's the key to them having success. The reality is, yeah, I mean, if the quarterback is good and Fields improves, then the Bears will be successful. But to Eric's point, they don't know much about Fields yet. They still have to go into this offseason. They have to evaluate his tape. They have to see what and talk to him and understand what they think and what they collectively believe his strengths are. Design that offense around that with Luke Getsy and see what they do. I expect a lot of RPOs. They didn't run a lot of those last year, and he did have pretty good success in a small sample size with some RPOs. I expect more play action. I expect more half-field reads as he starts to learn how to diagnose defenses and read things post-snap a little bit better. Then hopefully he can start being a little bit more of a full-field reader more often, especially in key situations. I expect a lot of that early on. So it'll be interesting. I'm very, very interested to see what Luke Getsy has planned. That is what I expect from a schematic standpoint, but the reality is that plan will come into place for the next several months to answer Eden's question.
Right, and I think you make a good point there too. It's let's not throw too much at him too soon. You know, if you want to start off with certain progressions, let him do that. You know, if you want to start off with the basic play action, hey, let's learn this, but not the whole thing. Like that's exactly how it needs to go. And I don't know, this Luke Getsy seems like, pun intended, he seems like a good get. You know, he seems like a lot of guys that he had interest around the league in a lot of places, and the Bears had the connections to go out and get him. And I think that honestly, that may have been a big reason why Ryan Poles went with Eberflus, was because of the Getsy connection and being able to say, hey, if this is your plan and this is the guy that you want, this is the guy we're targeting. And now we're looking at potentially seeing quarterback coach. We're looking at Joe Brady potentially there, who, you know, again, got blamed for a lot of garbage that he had to deal with and some really bad quarterbacks down in Carolina, and had some really good offensive talent down there. So we're looking like a new offensive room and a lot of voices in Fields' heads. And he even said, I'm really looking forward to this clean slate. First and foremost, I want to hear, this is how Ryan Poles put it to the media and how he wants to build this team up and what we were just discussing. And I think it's important to point out, as much as it sounds like basic press conference stuff, I think it's really important to hear and point out a couple things in here.
What am I about, and what's my philosophy? We're going to build through the draft. We're going to acquire young, fast, and physical football players. We're going to be selective in free agency, and we're going to connect evaluation with valuation. We're going to have a relentless approach to fix our weakness. We're going to maintain great self-awareness of who we are. We're going to solve problems with open communication and candor. And we're going to consistently put players in position to succeed. And the last thing, the most important piece, is we're going to take the North and never give it back.
Run through a wall for that, dude.
Hell yeah.
Mic drop at the end. Love to hear that. Even if it is cheesy, that's one type of coach speak I'll be okay with. I'm okay with him saying that. That was pretty awesome. But
I mean, beneath all the cheese, he's not wrong. I mean, if you want to contend in the NFL, you need to control your division, and he understands that. It's been that way with Kansas City. They've been able to control the AFC West for the most part, and this is why they've been able to contend so well, I know they have Mahomes and all that sort of stuff, but by controlling their division, they consistently get home games, and it gets them further into the playoffs, giving them more opportunities at the Super Bowl. It's the same thing that the Packers have done. So you need to control your division consistently if you want to win in the NFL. And yes, it was a bit of a propaganda statement, but it also wasn't wrong.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, winning your division is really how it starts. And, there's something to be said about these road teams that are able to go into various places like Cincinnati the last 2 games and the Rams in Tampa. That is impressive. But if you win your division, you get a home game, obviously the higher seed you are, better chances you have. That's how it goes. And so right now, if Aaron Rodgers is leaving the division, there's really never been a better time, absolutely never been a better time for the Bears to take control of the division. And they can, and they arguably could, if he improves, have the best quarterback in the division, which isn't saying much, but still, and they could certainly kind of pull what the Eagles did this last year. So it'll be very interesting. I liked what he said about, be selective in free agency, kind of going back to that young ascending type of player, just fill gaps, medium end starters in free agency as best you can and building through the draft. Of course, every team says that, but the Bears have more incentive right now to actually execute that plan. It'll be interesting to see how he improves on that ammo that he doesn't really have right now in the draft.
Finally believing in my Eagles philosophy, huh, Drew? Finally buying into my Eagles comparison from a couple weeks ago, huh?
The Eagles comparison is fine. It's just Jalen Hurts sucks. So, I mean, that's going away next year.
I don't think he's that bad. I think he's got a lot of improvements to make, but you're right. No, this team, let me pose a question here. If you're Ryan Poles and you're looking at this roster top to bottom right now, and you're looking at guys with a lot of trade value who are, like Robert Quinn, like Khalil Mack, are you trading those guys? Because I'll be honest, I think if I'm Ryan Poles, if I'm in that, maybe not both, but I'm trading Robert Quinn to get a draft pick. I think that this team needs to get younger, and you just need to have all the ammunition you need to throw at the offense. And right now with 5 draft picks, that's not enough. You need like 3 or 4 more if you can get lucky. So,
well, this goes back to another quote that Poles actually made on the radio after his press conference with ESPN 1000, and he said, "I think the more draft picks you can get, the better." So that's his philosophy. Stockpile your picks, and rely on your scouts to find you the talent, which is a great philosophy to have, especially if you're a good drafting team. And it's one of the frustrations I always had with Ryan Pace, because you were a good drafter, you could find that talent, but he never was able to stockpile the picks because he was always so aggressive in trading up. So when you keep that in mind and understand that the Bears have 5 picks, I absolutely do believe that he might start unloading some of these veteran players that might not fit what they're looking for, and go hunting for, even if they're mid-round picks, just see if you can get some extra ones to gain yourself some versatility in this draft. So yeah, I'd be looking at Eddie Goldman. He might be one that they end up trading because he's probably not a great fit for the type of front that the Bears are going to employ. And yeah, I think if you can get really good packages for somebody like Max, somebody like Quinn, I absolutely think you should at least hear them out and thinking, listen, we're probably not going to compete for a Super Bowl next season, and maybe not even in 2023. So if we can get, a couple of second round picks for one of these guys, 100% you absolutely have to consider it.
Yeah, agreed. And it's interesting. Like, it's going to be a question where the Bears don't necessarily get a lot of cap relief by getting rid of either Mack or Quinn this year. Now the question is it worth having one more season of elite 4-3 defensive ends in Mack and Quinn on your team, or trading one of them for a 3rd round draft pick? It's a good question. I am glad I don't have to make that decision, because you're technically getting elite play for a year as you make that transition to a 4-3. So it's an interesting one. But if we want to talk about philosophy and building through the draft, you're right, Kevin. I mean, you should be making at least one trade. You may not have the bodies and the ability to get more players to fill that role. And keep in mind, other players that are on that line right now, like Bilal Nichols is a free agent, Akeem Hicks is a free agent, Mario Edwards Jr., I believe, is a free agent. Travis Gibson, can he go back to a 4-3 after spending 2 years becoming a 3-4 linebacker? So
Yeah, exactly.
There's just a lot of questions on that front. So they may need some stability in at least one of these places. So, but yeah, I mean, to the point of Eddie Goldman certainly should be a trade candidate. Cody Whitehair, I think, probably doesn't fit that physical mold that Ryan Poles is looking for. He should probably be a draft pick. Maybe Eddie Jackson, maybe Tariq Cohen, whatever you can get, right? I mean, at that point, you're kind of shedding contracts for the ability to add any sort of player that may have traits that could be coached up by hopefully a really good coaching staff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I was off the Jakeem Grant move early on. I didn't really like him much as a returner. He struggled as a punt returner this year. But listen, man, I want that dude back on this offense, and I don't think Tariq Cohen has a spot when he's here. So if you've got a spot for Cohen, if you can go get a 6th or 7th rounder, which again, that's likely not going to get anything for a running back. Running backs just aren't worth much. But yeah, if you could package him with somebody else or try and figure out a guy who needs a returner, go for it, because I know Jakeem Grant's a free agent, but that's a guy I honestly think that they want to bring back. I hope they want to bring back because he had some of the most dynamic plays on the offensive side of the ball when the Bears were struggling to move the chains. I mean, this was a guy that gave you yards after catch. He was good on screens, all things that Eberflus has talked about wanting to implement. So I think in that, and then investing in wide receivers. Eric, you had an article that came out today that the Bears might be an intriguing trade option for Calvin Ridley, and that is exactly what I want to hear.
Oh, 100%. I mean, listen, the talent is undeniable with Calvin Ridley. He had 1,300 yards and 9 touchdowns in his last full season, so he can play. He's a baller. There's no question. The concerns from the Bears' perspective are a couple of things. His contract, he's going to be in his last year of his rookie deal, which is around $11 million. So you're going to have to think about, can we get him, signed to an extension if we were to trade for him? And then there's the bones of the trade itself. How much is it going to cost? Because obviously Atlanta's going to realize, listen, he's still a really talented wide receiver, so we should be able to get a decent package for him. So it comes down to, are the Bears willing to give up another high draft choice on a risky venture like this? Because you have to remember, Ridley stepped away after 5 games this past season because of mental health issues. So how committed is he to coming back to football? You have to ask that question. So there are a lot of variables in play here. It's a risk, but it would be a calculated risk that could really help the Bears if you can pair him up with Mooney.
Oh, it would be so awesome. I mean, that's the thing, is Ridley's a bigger body, a little bit stronger hands than Mooney. I mean, this would be a home run. This is the Josh Allen / Stephon Diggs type of trade. I know Stephon Diggs is a much better receiver at the moment, but again, this is something that would blow the Bears into the next realm of offensive capabilities. And they need it so badly. We've been talking about it ever since week 9 or 10 when they were struggling to score points. It's like the next disgruntled wide receiver. The Bears need to be all over that. And I'm not calling Calvin Ridley disgruntled. Don't take my word for that. He stepped away from the game for mental health reasons. It's a big difference, but you know what I mean. Along those lines, a guy who's not happy in his current position, go out and make the move. I mean, for Christ's sake, this Bears offense needs a guy like that, and that would be great. Go out and get Ridley and then draft a wide receiver too. I mean, shoot, and re-sign Marquise Goodwin, a guy I think could fit really well in a Luke Getsy offense with a downfield threat. Be great. I just think that those are some names that I want to keep an eye on, and I loved seeing this today because we've been talking about it the last couple of weeks, and you're right. What would a package look like? I'm not exactly sure. I mean, what are the Falcons looking to do? I mean, they need draft picks because they don't really have a quarterback at the moment, a quarterback of the future. So I don't know.
I want to put this up here real quick. Joey Luisi, I hope I'm saying that right. Go get Adams. Look, here's the challenge with Devontae Adams, man. Arguably the best receiver in the NFL, wants reportedly up to $30 million a year. Even if he gets 25, which is still a lot, but even if he only gets 25, the Bears only have $43 million of cap space this year. And sure, they could backload some of that, but that's not the approach they want to take. They're not this year ready for a Super Bowl contention, very likely not next year either. So at that point, you're wasting 2 years of Devontae Adams' prime and plus paying him for not being able to get the Bears over the hump. So I think the Bears have to be very calculated about this. They don't have enough cap space to fill out their roster right now. So Adams, while would be an awesome get, certainly, I don't think the timing is good enough for that right now. It's just unfortunate because that would have been amazing, but it's just bad timing.
And the good news in that perspective is, while you would like to get a proven veteran, I think this draft class is actually really solid. I've finally gotten around to starting to really evaluate the class, and I started with wide receivers. I always go about it by what are the Bears' needs. Mm-hmm. So I've started with wide receivers, and I'm seeing a lot of guys that I think could be there in the second round that I'm like, this guy's going to be a player. I mean, this guy's going to be a weapon. So I think they're going to have options, that can contribute right away for them if they decide to focus on the draft, like Poles has said.
Here's the interesting point, though. Someone like David Bell is usually like that easy link, second round-ish talent. Bears need a receiver. Feels like an easy mock. I wouldn't call David Bell a burner. I wouldn't call him, he's a good possession receiver, has size, physical-ish. Just very, very solid, good route runner. Is that someone that would fit Ryan Poles' evaluation of what a Bear should be?
Because he values speed. Yeah, I get it.
It's a good question. So to that point, what kind of players kind of fit that Ryan Poles box, so to speak, and would be available in the second round?
One name that has really stood out to me already is this kid from South Alabama, Jalen Tolbert. Mm-hmm. I'm a big fan of his. He's 6'3", fast. He can outrun everybody, good hands, solid route running. I think because he's from a bit smaller program, he's kind of going under the radar, which would actually serve the Bears well. Yep. But, once all the, testing and, pro days and all that stuff goes around, I have a feeling he's going to start to rise because I was really impressed by what I saw on tape. But if he's there, I wouldn't hate it at all. You guys should look him up. I think you're going to like what you see.
What's his name?
Jalen Tolbert.
Jalen Tolbert. Okay. Yeah, I'll look that up and I'll have a highlight tape for the next show. Next week, we'll definitely talk about Jalen Tolbert. It's a name to watch. I think that why not follow? I know that this is like, everybody wants the home run receiver in the draft, and I'm one of them because look at how well it worked out for the Bengals this year. Pairing up a college quarterback with his college wide receiver and all that, and he was a sure-blown stud. We saw that in college. And guess what? Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave, both going to be good receivers in the NFL. Both of them are going to be very good in the NFL. They're both going to be serviceable. We don't know going to be, the level of Justin Jefferson and, what we're seeing over in Cincinnati. But what's wrong with trading a guy like Robert Quinn for a first-round pick and going out and getting Chris Olave or Garrett Wilson, whichever one you like more? I think they're both great. So
you can get a first-round pick. Shit, yeah.
I think you should be able to get a first-round pick for Robert Quinn, right?
I get it. He's coming off probably the best year of his career.
Premium position.
Do you trade first-round picks for guys who are over 30 that aren't, quarterbacks or one of those premium positions? Especially with his injury history, I don't think they'd be able to get a first-rounder, but I don't think a second-rounder is completely out of the question. Maybe a second-rounder and, some change, like a mid or late-round pick.
If you get a second rounder and you can, I don't know if you could package it up to go higher, maybe trade back into the first round, but you could at least get, a good offensive lineman and a good wide receiver, and all of a sudden you're feeling better about your team. So, if you can get a high draft pick for Robert Quinn, awesome. If they're only offering a fourth round pick, I feel like you're better off holding on to him. So it'll be interesting on that sense, in that sense, but. I just to your point, before we move on, I do have to eat some crow. Very wrong about Jamar Chase. I thought he was going to be not someone who can separate in the NFL. Clearly that's wrong. So heck yeah. If they're able to get someone like Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, that chemistry from college, and obviously both those guys have good speed, good hands. The Bears should sprint to the podium if he's available, or if either one of them is available.
Proven system that works. Bears can follow that Bengals. They can follow that Bengals resume and maybe repeat like next year, like they're doing this year. Again, that would take a lot of upgrades, but the Bengals have plenty of holes. Don't get me wrong. They got the quarterback right and they have the weapons right. And if the Bears wanted to go along, the Bears have a better defense than the Bengals. They also probably have a better offensive line than the Bengals. They're probably both on the same tier, very close. So, but guess what? They got the quarterback right and they have smart coaches. So it really depends on those two things we always come down to saying. But let's hear from Justin Fields before we move on. to another wild weekend of NFL playoffs, and we'll talk about Tom Brady. But here's Justin Fields talking about his new regime, kind of getting us excited for what's to come.
Yeah, Justin, Matt talked about having leadership, lead by example first, and then step into it vocally. He also praised your leadership. How do you hope in your second year to step into an even more bigger leadership role now that you're not a rookie anymore?
Yeah, I think last year was kind of weird, just, me not starting the season, being the starting quarterback. So it was kind of a weird, leadership role. I think me and Andy would kind of switch off. But, now that I am, starting off the season as a starting quarterback, I think I'll be more comfortable, playing that leader role. And, there's no more, he's a rookie, this and that. It's time now. So I'm excited, like I said before, and I can't wait to get to work.
There you go. Can't wait to get to work. Can't wait to lead. Love what he said about he likes Eberflus's attitude, and he's looking forward to that clean slate. So, yeah, we're expecting a lot of Justin. It might take a little bit of time, but he's smart. He's got a great football IQ. We saw that before his pre-draft, everything, and that high score on that test he took was the highest of all time. I don't remember the name of the test, but things like that are going to come into play and going to be pretty big here as he has to learn a whole new playbook again and get ready to potentially win a division should Aaron Rodgers be out.
Yeah.
And hopefully Jim Harbaugh doesn't go to Minneapolis, although it seems that way. I'm going to be upset about that one. But we'll see.
Looks like it's happening.
I know. That's not good news for Bears fans, but we'll talk about that later on when that becomes official. What was that? You don't think that's you don't agree? You don't like it?
I'm not a Harbaugh stan like everyone else seems to be, I guess.
Yeah. Okay, good coach. I think his biggest value is that he can put together a good staff. Certainly, he's proven to do that. So,
yeah.
Sure, but again, someone like Jim Harbaugh, if they're able to make magic with Kirk Cousins and make the playoffs, like they're going to lose that coach, and it's kind of one of the obviously the fears that I have with Luke.
I want to go out on a limb here and say I don't see that many differences between Harbaugh and Mike Zimmer, if I'm being completely honest here. They both seem like a similar type of personality, the tough-minded sort of thing. So it seems like they're trading one guy who's very similar with another. So
yeah,
maybe I'm wrong,
hard
but
ass for hard ass.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. And from all we've heard is the message from Zimmer was wearing thin on the locker room after having to endure it for so long. So now they're going to bring in this other guy who's basically known for the same thing. So I don't know. I guess we'll see.
I think that Harbaugh's had a pretty good track record of coaching offenses, and with all that talent they have in Green Bay, all that talent that they have on the offensive side of the ball up in Minneapolis, that I don't know. It's concerning. I would rather, I was kind of hoping they would go with somebody else, but again, who knows? They had a 9-hour interview today with the Giants defensive coordinator. So
Patrick Graham,
I don't know how you interview
somebody. He's been surrounded by head coaching stuff for a couple of years now. I mean, you don't interview somebody for 9 hours, and you've got to be interested in him if you're going for that long. But I said on Twitter, if they interviewed that guy for 9 hours and then the very next day you hire Jim Harbaugh, then what Brian Flores is doing is absolutely valid. So
yeah, that's a great point. I think I didn't even really put that together, but you're absolutely right. I just think, for one, 9-hour interview, get the hell out of here. I'm not gonna 9-hour interview, dude. I'm not that interesting. I mean, this guy must be way more interesting than me, because I'll be honest, I'm out of there after 3 hours max. I can barely, what am I supposed to talk about? What do you want to know? Everything about me, but be honest.
Honestly, I don't know if the entire interview was spent just grilling him with question after question. They probably toured facilities and did all that sort of stuff too. So, a good chunk of it was probably spent talking to him, learning his plan, his philosophies, all that sort of stuff, but also to take a tour of the facility. What would you do, if you had it like this and this and this? So, right. I'm sure there were breaks.
Yeah, no doubt. Maybe a nice lunch on the company card too up in Minneapolis.
Yeah, man. Wine and dine him.
Yeah. So who knows? We should be getting that coaching decision sometime very soon here. Be Jim Harbaugh or Patrick Graham. So NFL playoffs, again, still not disappointing. This has been really awesome. I really love the NFL playoffs. We talked about it last week about how, and my take has been since the beginning of the year, and I'm powering through all the way to the end, baby. The Rams, the most complete team in the league. They found a way to win, even though Sean McVay tried to screw them over there with a couple challenges at the end there. And really,
he's almost done it a couple of times the past 2 games.
Dude, just relax with the challenge. What are you doing, man? Come on.
How has he not fired whoever the hell's radioing that down to him yet?
I mean, know, man.
like neither of those were like even close. Like nothing. I was watching that. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, why? Oh God. I'm not a Rams fan. Okay. Yeah, I care about, Stafford doing well. I want him to win, but shit, like.
Yeah, it was bad. I mean, again, they pulled it out. Stafford made some great plays down the end of the game, and Cooper Kupp again, still the MVP in my mind, as we talked about last week. He's the most dominant player on the field right now. 2 touchdowns, could have had 3. He was great. He was outstanding. The Rams beating the 49ers, and again, Jimmy Garoppolo put up a valiant effort, I think, on a bad hand, and threw some Jimmy G balls out there, or some Carson Wentz balls, like I like to call them. But best of luck to wherever he ends up. He's a Northwest suburbs guy. We were obviously rooting for him, and my household was rooting for him and Robbie Gould to make the Super Bowl. Even though I had the Rams all the way, but my heart was still with the Niners. I was kind of hoping, and I'm a Kyle Shanahan guy, but great game all the way around.
Mm-hmm.
And then you go to the AFC side, and just like, man,
ridiculous.
I'm glad I didn't bet on that game, because I would have lost all my money. Are you kidding me, Joe Burrow? Man, Mahomes.
Are you kidding me? Bengals defense. What they did to Patrick Mahomes in that second half doesn't happen. It doesn't happen to Mahomes.
Schematically was absolutely brilliant.
Yes.
Matt Bowen had some amazing breakdowns on Twitter. I highly suggest, if you haven't seen those, see them. It was absolutely phenomenal work. Double teaming Travis Kelce, playing a robber towards Tyreek Hill, 2 deep safeties to keep everything in front and frustrate Mahomes. And their defensive line is good. They won.
Trey Hendrickson, man, one of the signings of the offseason.
Unbelievable. It's brilliant defensive plan. Patrick Mahomes was absolutely an abomination in the second half and overtime. And credit Joe Burrow, man. I mean, that guy is not physically impressive in terms of arm strength or anything, but that dude he is so calm. He is, pretty much like just mentally very, very impressive. Nothing phases him. It was.
He didn't make any mistakes in that game. I think that was the biggest thing. He didn't make any mistakes. He put his team in.
He had a couple of throws that probably should have been picked, but I mean, overall, I mean, he escaped a couple sacks.
Yeah, the first half you're right. There was like a couple that throws to the flats that were,
But like, bad. I mean, he escaped some sacks and extended drives, and was very much a reason that the Bengals were able to pull that off. So he's fun to watch.
Yeah, no, it's been a really fun weekend of NFL football. The Super Bowl matchup kind of reads me a little boring, but I don't know. It's like I would have rather watched Pat in the Super Bowl, to be honest with you.
Oh, come on, man. The Bengals are a great story.
I'm rooting for the Bengals, even though my Rams take is still there. I would rather see the Bengals win. I think they've earned it. Not having a playoff win in 30 years and going to be Super Bowl champs. Be pretty great.
I'm just glad we're going to see a Super Bowl that doesn't have Mahomes or Brady in it.
Yeah, did you see that? So Tom Brady obviously retired, and he's been in 18% of the Super Bowls ever played. Tom Brady.
18, oh my God!
18% of NFL Super Bowls ever. Think of how silly that sounds. That's almost 1 in every 5.
One of a kind, man.
Absolutely, we'll absolutely never see anything like him ever again.
9 Super Bowl appearances.
Say that again.
9 Super Bowl appearances, right?
10.
10. Yeah.
10. 1-7. Just Jesus ridiculous.
Christ. Yeah.
And this is the first matchup of first overall picks at quarterback in the Super Bowl since Peyton Manning and Cam Newton back in 2015, I think. Which is
really okay. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm in the minority, or I probably am, but I would have loved to seen another Brady Mahomes matchup in the Super Bowl. I thought that would have been great. It was great TV last year. I know that the game kind of underwhelmed, but I like watching the best on the best. And that's, again, no knock on Burrow or Stafford. Both those guys have been great this year, and I'm excited to see Burrow, what he can do. And I think the Bengals might win this game, if I'm being honest. They seem to be riding the hot hand. And
boy,
also,
can they stop Donald? Because their right guard is an abomination in and of himself.
I'll tell you what, this actually plays very well, because the Rams defense sucks. I mean, yeah, Aaron Donald's amazing, but man, Jalen Ramsey got cooked several times. I mean, obviously against Tampa.
Yeah, no easy task coming up with Chase either. Exactly.
Yeah, and quite honestly, like you will have to go counter. If you have to counter a tough pass rush, go with the screen game. Deebo Samuel burned them 100 times on the screen. on the screens. So look, this may end up being one of those tricky games where the Bengals are able to put up points. I'm very interested to see what that Rams offensive line, if they're able to hold up against that defensive line, because I don't think the Rams are going to be able to run the ball. So this is going to be a lot of Stafford throwing the ball. So it should be fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm excited. Who do you guys got? You got the Rams, Drew? I'm
rooting for the Rams. I don't know. I don't have a pick yet. I'll probably give it until next week to come up with a plan. I probably want to watch a little bit more tape, but I'm rooting. I honestly wouldn't care either one. It would be a fun story if they won. I'm personally rooting for Stafford.
Eric?
It's really tough, actually. This is probably one of the tougher picks in terms of who I think will win in a long time. I would go with the Rams because I think they're a slightly more complete team, and they have a lot of, a lot of key veteran guys who are pushing them forward. I thought the addition of Eric Weddle is being tremendously underrated in terms of his leadership and, experience. Von Miller, he's always been big in the playoffs, and he's proving that again. I think Donald is a key matchup problem for the Bengals because of their offensive line issues. Stafford's been playing some of the best football of his career in some really big games and big moments. Cooper Kupp, nobody's been able to stop him. So, and Sean, I think the coaching mismatch is going to favor McVay over Zach Taylor. So I think everything leans Rams. Plus, they're going to be at home. They know that stadium. They know that turf. So I think it's going to be close, but I think the inexperience is going to wear against the Bengals late in that game, no matter how well Burrow functions in those situations.
Yeah, you mentioned it right away when we started talking about this. It's the battle of the line. It's going to be Aaron Donald just eating Joe Burrow alive, and I think that's going to be the story, and I think that's why the Rams win. I'm going to root for the Bengals, and this is why I'm rooting for the Bengals, first and foremost. And I don't want to get all Chicago-y weird on people, but listen, we live and die with our teams. LA Rams fans, I feel like don't even exist. And I know they just moved there not even a decade ago from St. Louis, or maybe it was, I don't remember when exactly they went down there, but
didn't 49ers fans outnumber them in that game?
Look at the game. I mean, you heard the beat LA chant right before kickoff.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
And 49ers fans travel very well, very, very well. So it's not ridiculously surprising. I'm surprised that the Rams fans sold as many tickets as they did, considering the restrictions they placed on some of those ticket sales. So that was probably a little bit shocking, but even week 18 in LA, the 49ers fans took over. The Rams were surprised. This game, it seems like the Rams were ready. But, it'll be interesting to see how many Bengals fans travel for this game because –
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think a lot will.
Yeah,
probably.
Bengals have more fans than they get credit for. They have a very loyal following.
For sure.
So that's part of the reason I think I'm rooting for the Bengals is just because stronger fan – I don't know. As much as it is cheesy to talk about, fans and, who's got a more loyal fan base and things like that, because it's all, it's all, you can't measure it by anything. But
right.
I don't know. Being from here, we live and die with our teams, and I know we're not the only town that does, but it certainly doesn't seem like LA does that. They do with the Lakers and the Dodgers sometimes, but certainly not with football. I mean, I think that's been pretty obvious. Whereas Bengals fans, I mean, you saw the reactions on Twitter from some of these fans.
Yeah.
It was crazy. I mean, they were astounded. So I'm rooting for the Bengals, but I have the Rams winning the game. I will put money on the Rams. I'm going to go probably, I don't know what the threshold is on the national anthem singing this year. I'll probably go the over is what I've heard. So I'm going to put some money on that. And I'll also go, I'm probably going to take the field on Snoop Dogg not lighting up at the halftime show on stage because I don't think he's going to be allowed to. But that is a prop bet. If you look, that is a prop bet. So
I love the Super Bowl, man.
We're gonna have some fun on it. Well, maybe we'll do a segment on prop bet shows. Maybe I'll get you guys to throw some money on some prop bets for some fun. How about that, huh?
I'll give you my what I would pick.
Okay.
And we can go from there.
All right. Yeah. Maybe we'll do that next week before the maybe getting a little bit closer to the Super Bowl. Maybe not on Tuesday. Maybe we'll do something else. But yeah, Super Bowl Sunday, February 13th. Bengals and Rams from beautiful SoFi Stadium. So it'll be something. News of the day: Tom Brady officially retires from the NFL after 22 years, and it's officially. I said this. I was lucky enough to go on television a couple nights ago and talk about Brady. Why they asked me, I have no fucking idea, but it was cool to go on, and I'm happy that I got to do it. But they asked me, what does this mean to NFL fans? What does it mean to, like, Chicago fans and stuff? And it's like, well, first and foremost, it's one less guy that we have to go through in the NFC so we like that. But also, it's the bookend to the Phillip Rivers, the Eli, Peyton, Drew Brees, Ben Roethlisberger. That chapter is now shut, and I think that that's bittersweet for a lot of fans. Maybe not so much us because we didn't have a quarterback in that era, but that was really it took the game to a new place, and that's kind of those were the quarterbacks you loved playing with in Madden, and certainly now a big, big hole to fill for these young quarterbacks. We'll see how it goes.
I mean, it's a different era now, man. I mean, most of the remaining quarterbacks they're just built differently. They operate differently. They have different strengths. I don't mean this in a disparaging way, but I think Stafford is probably the last quarterback that really embodies that, quick decision making, get the ball out quickly, field general type of quarterback. I mean, Josh Allen's growing into that. Patrick Mahomes is that, to an extent as well. But that entire era was full of those. And I mean, Tom Brady, man, obviously the greatest to ever do it. There will never, ever be a career like his again. There just won't. It's too hard in the NFL. And that guy won his first Super Bowl when I was in 4th grade. Obviously, Kevin, you were younger. Eric, I don't know how old you are, but probably we were all young. This was 22 years ago. So
I was 16.
Yeah. See, I mean, it's just very young, and we've grown up with every year Tom Brady, watching Tom Brady this, Tom Brady that, and I mean, it's like this sounds like excessive, but it's like a part of my life has died now that Tom Brady's moved on because it's just
sad.
It is.
It's kind of emotional. Yeah, I know.
It's greatness. It is greatness to a degree that we haven't seen since Michael Jordan, and never will see again in the NFL. So it's hard. It's hard to imagine an NFL season next year without someone like Tom Brady to kind of be a constant, and it sucks for NFL fans. Sucks for me personally. I loved watching him play, but. It just kind of gives rise to this new era of quarterbacks, and let's see how well they're able to do.
I mean, the next generation of quarterbacks is here. There's no doubt about that. Burrow's already in the Super Bowl. Mahomes has already won a Super Bowl. Justin Herbert's probably going to get to one eventually, given how well he's played. Josh Allen. The AFC is just swimming in great quarterbacks right now, and I think the NFC is going to need some time to reload. We're hoping Justin's going to be one of them, but he still has work to do before he gets there. There's still Russell Wilson. None of us really, buy into Kyler Murray at this point. So the NFC is really devoid of any. I mean, Aaron Rodgers is still here until he's not. So we really have to accept that fact.
I forgot Rodgers. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I don't think that chapter is quite closed yet, but it's getting there given where he seems to be leaning. Maybe he'll be back. Maybe he'll be traded. Nobody knows at this point. But, the NFC is even more open than it's been in a long time. So, you have to take that as a point of how great Brady was, that he himself in a team sport that features, 53 players on every main roster, that he had that much of an impact going from the Patriots to the Buccaneers and instantly made them Super Bowl champions. That's the measure of his greatness. And considering he did it at 43 years old, which is just unheard of. So, for the longest time, I was a Peyton Manning guy. I always felt that Peyton Manning was the best quarterback to have ever played. I was a huge fan of his. His battles with Brady were legendary. I lived for that rivalry. And then over time, as Brady continued to win, it was hard for me, but I eventually had to admit that you can't argue with the rings. So, he is the greatest of all time. I can no longer dispute that. And, I really hope he gets into the media now that he's retired, because he's going to be absolutely
amazing.
So much fun to watch.
We need a Brady cast. You know how we have Manning cast? We need a Brady cast. We need like a Breeze Brady cast. It'd be fun.
We need a joint cast between those two, because that would be that would be must see.
I wonder where he's going to end up, man. I wonder what his connections are in the business world, the broadcast world. Well, with Amazon launching their thing, maybe they're targeting Brady.
Nobody's going to outbid Bezos if he wants Brady.
Exactly. So that's kind of. I don't think Brady's football career is done. I think he's still going to be around the NFL. His playing career may be over, but his football career is still there. And it's funny how he knows how much money he can make by just dropping his name into anything. I mean, it's Tom Brady we're talking about. You know, he's going to be around doing something, and I know that just because we saw him, he kind of almost gave us his highlight reel on the Manning cast. I think he was on once or twice with them this year, and he was great. He was fun. I mean, and it was
Very fun.
His social media team has done an excellent job of kind of, you know, encompassing
him.
Yes, exactly. Encompassing what he is outside of his yelling on the field and sometimes, you know, screaming at people and not shaking Nick Foles' hand and other things like that. I think we've kind of seen a human element to him. And I'll tell you what, if ever I need a laugh, it's that video after the AFC Championship game at Arrowhead of those two, Gronk and Brady, walking to the team plane without saying a word, and it's just like like it makes me laugh every single time. And then they did it last year or 2 years ago. No, it was last year. They did it last year after they beat the Packers. So it's just hilarious. I think Gronk will be on his way out too. Both those guys, Hall of Famers, Hall of Fame talents, and it was truly a pleasure to watch.
Can I read you guys a stat real quick?
Yeah.
Just thing on Brady. I'll read you guys a stat. So this is arguably it's PFF. It's not perfect, but it's a relatively indicative, subjective effort at grading based on film. And
is it that WAR stat that we all saw? Yeah.
The PFF WAR. For our listeners who may not have seen this, PFF WAR, wins above replacement, goes back to 2006. Since 2006, here's the number one most valuable player based on WAR since 2006, which is how far back that stat goes. Think of all of the amazing seasons you've seen from every single player in the NFL since then. 2006, Brady. 2007, Brady. 2008, Brady. 2009, Brady. 2010, Brady. 2011, Brady. 2012, Brady. 13, Brady. 14, Brady. 15, Brady. 16, Brady. 17, Brady. 18, Brady. 19, Brady. 20, Brady. 21. Take a guess.
Yeah,
it's Brady.
Isn't that insane? It's insane. It's silly. And you're right. It is a stat that, you know, may have some flaws in there and stuff like that. But it is a very Pro Football Focus does a very good job of grading their players on individual efforts and things like that. And that's just astounding to see that. I mean, you can't argue with it.
You have Aaron Rodgers' greatness in there. You have Peyton Manning's greatness in there. You have Adrian Peterson in there. I mean, you have, some legendary seasons in there, and Brady most valuable in every single
even in that first one, LaDainian Tomlinson's season, 31 touchdowns, and he couldn't even beat out Brady.
Fucking hell, man.
Yeah, that's outstanding. I mean, that's really incredible to see that. And hats off to Tom. Can you guys name the only Bears quarterback to ever beat Tom Brady?
Nick Foles.
Yeah, Nick Foles. Tom Brady in his career against the Bears in 7 games, 105.9 passer rating, 2,059 yards, 19 touchdowns, 4 picks. He was a Bear killer. I mean, no question about it. Those games that we'll go back and think about the blizzard, and you said 2010, Eric?
No, he was just a killer. It didn't matter which team he was playing.
Yeah.
Against the Buffalo Bills, what his record was?
Poor Bills.
Absurd, I'm sure.
3-3.
No wonder the Bills beat up on the Patriots so badly in that playoff game. They were taking out all their frustrations.
Wait. You mean to tell me he only lost to the Bills 3 times?
Goes to show how great he was, but also how bad the Bills were.
Yeah. That's even worse than us with Green Bay. Wow. Wow. I did see, I'm friends with a few Bills fans, and I saw on Twitter, "We are free" in capital letters. And then like an hour later, after everyone's like, hold the phone, he goes like, "You got to be shitting me."
I don't know, man. I don't think anybody's going to beat out that Colts tweet that they sent out.
All of them were funny. Like the Colts one was fantastic. The Jets had, like, at first they said like this better
be real,
and then like, okay, congratulations, just awesome.
Did you see the New York one? The news one.
It's like legendary quarterback that lost 2 Super Bowls to the Giants. The local headlines are the best.
Always.
It's just good stuff. Good stuff from social media team. Good stuff all around. Hats off to Tom Brady. gonna be weird, man. I've never known an NFL without him, so it's gonna be
Yeah.
it's gonna be weird not watching him play. So certainly hats off in retirement, and looking forward to seeing him around and seeing what he does. I guarantee he'll be in a booth somewhere at some point soon,
I hope so.
doing something along with the league. Oh, I know it. I know he will. Maybe not a broadcast booth, but he'll be doing something with the league, no question. Too big of a name. We'll touch on this before we get out of here. Brian Flores, this is a potential life, league, everything changing maneuver here from Brian Flores, a class action lawsuit against the National Football League for being fired over what he calls racial premises. And here's where this means something. No, we haven't seen anybody really call out the National Football League on this before. We've heard tweets, and the NFL needs more black coaches and needs more representation. The Rooney Rule implemented. We've seen strides to that, but it's all been kind of just this soft front until now. And Brian Flores sacrificing his coaching career, which he says in his statement right here, God has gifted me with a special talent to coach the game of football, but the need for change is bigger than my personal goals. This is some powerful stuff, and I don't know if he has any merits to this. I'm sure that he does, but whether or not it can be proven is going to be a difficult thing, and him sacrificing his coaching career is certainly a choice. And this is, Eric, you made a great point. If you interview a guy for 9 hours like the Vikings did, but you go and hire Jim Harbaugh instead, what does that really mean? What are your true intentions? Are you just putting on a front to say, hey, look at me, I interviewed the black guy, but I don't want to take him as my head coach? Like, what does that actually mean? And I don't know. This is a incredible move and a very powerful move from Brian Flores. And we'll see what happens. I mean, this is, in making the decision, I understand I may be risking the coaching the game I love and has done so much for my family. My sincere hope is by standing up against systematic racism in the NFL, others will join me. That positive change is made for generations to come. And I'll be honest with you, we're going to see people join it. That's what a class action lawsuit is. I think we're going to see, guys join in on him. I don't know who they'll be, but you don't just file this without word from other black coaches from around the league who have felt the same thing, and black coordinators and people who have really felt the wrath of white ownership taking full advantage of what they've been offering for the entire duration that the league has been a thing. So maybe this is a step in the right direction.
And I think Kenny Stills actually hit the nail on the head with his own comment on Twitter. Until you start to get more minority owners, this is going to continue to happen regardless of the stand that Flores is taking. They need to start, including more black owners. I remember Walter Payton tried to become an owner after he retired, and he wasn't able to get it done. And the fact is, there still hasn't been a minority owner in the NFL, which is just insane considering how long the league's been around now and how many worthy candidates there are out there that could own an NFL team. So, and I totally agree with that statement, because until you have people at the top who will balance that out, this stuff is going to continue to happen. And that's the real tragic part, because I think this publicity alone is going to be really rough for the NFL, even if he doesn't have much of any evidence to go along with it. If he does, that's just going to make it worse. But, the publicity alone, the week of the Super Bowl when the media attention is going to be at its max, I mean, he chose his moment absolutely perfectly.
100%. And, obviously there's a lot in this lawsuit. Obviously, I think in my opinion, I think the stuff that he talked about that happened in Miami with Stephen Ross and $100,000, for every loss and those kinds of things, I thought that was a lot more. I feel like that one has a lot more legs, to be honest with you. And I'm not saying that obviously what he's saying about here from a racial diversity standpoint and equal opportunity for head coaching jobs isn't happening or important. Not at all. I feel like, though, that there is a defense that some of these teams could probably give, right? I mean, you look at the Bears, for example. I know they're not on the list here, but some of the other teams that went beyond the requirements of the Rooney Rule, right, with the number of interviews that they did and whom they interviewed, they could, from a defense standpoint, probably put that together. But it's tough, and I think that the reality in the NFL is a lot of these teams, like, for example, the Giants and Brian Daboll, they know who they want to hire, or they have a very good idea of who they want to hire before this process happens. And so you can say that, oh, the interview was a sham, but the reality is that a rule like the Rooney Rule, while well-intentioned, kind of gives way to what they call these sham interviews if the team has already made up their mind. And look, it's hard. It sucks. It's very unfortunate. I wish there were more candidates that were, pre-sought after that are diverse, right? It would be better for everybody involved, but unfortunately it's not, and it's hard to punish a team for hiring someone they felt was best for the job. Maybe there's an angle that we're not seeing, or evidence that will be proven otherwise, which would be good, and they're able to implement real change. I thought the rule that incentivizes teams to hire diverse candidates in positions of power, and the team that grew that candidate would get that draft pick compensation.
Right.
Yeah.
It was a very good incentive. And
That's what just happened with the Bears and the
smart-
Chiefs.
Yeah, it's a smart step in the right direction, because you're starting to get a lot more black GMs now, significantly more. Well, for some reason, it's just not affecting the head coaching market yet, hopefully, because now you only have Mike Tomlin. He's the only black coach in the NFL. And unless something happens with Minnesota or one of these few remaining teams, it's probably going to stay that way, which is just incredible to think about.
Byron Leftwich in Jacksonville, potentially?
Still a possibility, but it's now looking like it might be Mike McDaniel. He's starting to gain some steam down there. Maybe Ross still is at least holding out some hope that he can still land Harbaugh, because he's been chasing him for a long time. So who knows?
I'm going to put up the statement from the NFL one more time. I left it up there so everyone can kind of read this, just because I think this statement is understandable through the first part and then just preposterous at the end. We understand that you guys are making choices and you're doing things to incentivize draft picks for minority candidates, and you're doing things to promote diversity. But to say you just stop it at "we will defend against these claims," you cannot say they're without merit in 2 hours. That is just you can't say that. That's wrong. That's false, and it's completely taking away from someone who's been wronged by his owner and by this league. And guess what? If we're hearing this from multiple black coaches, former, past, and present, guess what? There's something going on there, and you cannot say that these claims are without merit. That you can totally say that you're doing all that you can in trying to fix your systemic problems, and you can totally say that you're going to defend against these claims. But to say they're without merit and completely dismissing that Brian Flores is a case here is irresponsible, ridiculous, and putrid. And it's honestly really a shame that, a league that we all love, everyone makes mistakes, and certainly the NFL has made their own mistakes. So own up to it. Why do you have to say they're without merit? That's all you have to do, is own your mistakes. And truth be told, it's disgusting, and it sucks to see. Whether these claims are with merit or not, even if Brian Flores is sitting on his own island saying this happened and none of it happened, guess what? It doesn't mean that there was no systemic racism in the NFL towards other coaches.
Yeah, well, honestly, we'll see what happens. It'll be interesting, but he chose a good time to do it. Honestly, this is where maximum
History Month, and
you have a bye week before the Super Bowl. There's nothing else to talk about except, I guess, maybe Tom Brady's retirement, but now it's more important. So it's going to be fascinating.
We'll take your questions. We got a lot of them in the comment section. Go ahead and leave them. If you guys want to start rolling them in right now, I should have mentioned this at the beginning of the show, but we always do. If you're new to the show, we've been going on for a few months now. Club Dub Podcast on sportsmockery.com. We always do a comment section at the end, as Eric and Drew also do their weekly mailbags as well. So if you don't get your comment answered here, definitely ask it on Twitter.
We do have a few already. So Matthew Pyle, wait, are we for sure going to the 4-3? Yes, Matt Eberflus did. He did miss out, or he did mention that. And the idea will be to implement some aspects of 3-4 when needed. Obviously, the Bears will be a nickel a good bunch, considering it's a pass-first league. But yeah, the idea is that they'll be going back to 4-3. So that means, 2 interior defensive linemen. You have, 2 defensive ends that are hand on the ground. Your linebackers need to be good in coverage. They're not really pass rushers. So yeah, it's a shift in the kind of profile you look for in players for sure.
Did we miss out on Harbaugh? Yeah, unless he wants to be the quarterback coach.
Which I don't know if I want.
Yeah, it looks like he's going to Minnesota. With everything happening down in Miami, I don't know if that's going to be the right move. And my guy Mark Carman at WGN broke the news that Harbaugh was going to inform Michigan that he would not be returning. That part of it was true, and that happened. That part of his report was true, but he did backtrack and say today that with everything going on in Miami, that now it's very likely that will not happen. So, yes, we missed out on Harbaugh. I hope we made the right choice. Time will tell. You never know with these. Sometimes, I don't know. I like to point to Matt LaFleur a lot. Nobody had any idea who he was. They knew that he had called good plays and he worked in good offenses, and people were like, "Oh yeah, this guy might be good." But there were other head coaching candidates on the table that people wanted, and they went with the guy nobody heard of, and it's paid dividends. So you never know. We'll have to see. What else we got?
Can we trade Whitehair?
Yes, we can. It'll be difficult from a salary standpoint because you're not going to get much back in terms of cap space. So it would have to be for a decent draft pick. If you are going to trade him, we're talking probably somewhere in the vicinity of a third or a fourth and an extra pick, something along those lines, where I think the Bears would consider it, because they really don't have a lot of options right now and not a lot of resources to replace Whitehair. So they're not going to just give away players just for random, late round draft picks. They're only going to trade them if they think they can get good value for them.
Exactly. Should we expect Joe Brady to be hired this week? Looking possible? Yeah.
This is the interesting thing. The expectation is he's going to interview for the quarterback's coach job. From what I've heard, he is interested. And the reason there's been a bit of a delay, the belief is because he's still holding out a little bit of hope that another team might come calling for an offensive coordinator position, which you can understand. So he's probably holding out a little bit longer to see if somebody comes along, at the 11th hour. But, I would expect by the end of the week, he'll have made a decision, and he probably will end up being the Bears quarterback's coach.
Yeah, I haven't heard him mentioned around any other team, really.
Yeah.
So, and he seems to have strong connections to Ryan Poles and Eberflus. So, yeah, I could see it. I think it'll happen.
Which would be good. Who are the starting linebackers next season? Roquan Smith and ...
Alec Ogletree.
Two other guys, really. Maybe. I really like the undrafted free agent they found, this past year, Williams, the kid from Houston Baptist. I think he's got talent, and I think actually a 4-3 defense would be better for him. So, given his size, he might be an option for the Sam linebacker spot. So it comes down to where you're going to play Roquan. Are you going to play him in the middle, or are you going to play him at will, where Lance Briggs, would have played in a 4-3 defense? If it's
he'll be the weak side guy.
Yeah, I think he fits the weak side much better in terms of his skill set and size. So if they do play him there, then you've got to find yourself a new middle linebacker. And there are some options in free agency. I think somebody that Eberflus has actually worked with before, Anthony Walker Jr., who's been a middle linebacker, might be somebody to watch there. So just some names to keep in mind, but I do think they're probably going to end up adding 2 new faces to the linebacker room.
Same for sure. 2 more. Sorry.
Oh, yeah, go for that one first.
For this one first. What is Mac's future with the organization? Trading for something, please. We did discuss this earlier. He's very much a possibility to be traded. It depends on what the Bears feel their strategy is for the offseason, the cost benefit of doing so. What kind of player could they possibly replace him with? So
I hope not. I hope they don't trade Mac, man. Just hope plan on that. I don't know.
Be nice if he stays, but if somebody's willing to offer a good package for him, and you're a team that's sort of retooling right now, you have to at least consider it.
For sure. Last piece, what's the delay with Bisaccia? So he did, I think, interview for the Jaguars head coaching job today, if I'm not mistaken. So
today or tomorrow, something like that. But yeah. So that's pretty much the reason he's been delayed. It's because he still has a shot at some head coach openings, and he deserves to interview them because of what he did in Las Vegas, which was a tremendous coaching job. So he's feeling those out, seeing if he can get an opportunity like that, and if it doesn't fall through, the Bears are considered the likeliest landing spot for him as a special teams coach.
Agreed. Yep.
Cool. I think that about wraps it up on the comment.
Kevin here with an unpopular take.
No, man. Not happening.
Sorry,
not with this new defense. That's not happening. There's no way. No way.
They're
Roquan's going
signing
to
him
get his
to
money.
a big deal.
I don't want to trade, and the reason I don't want to trade Mac either is because I look and I don't know. I look at the teams in the postseason that had poor defenses this year, but still managed to find their way into deeper spots in the playoffs. All had at least one very good pass rusher. Imagine having an elite pass rusher. It makes all the difference in the world. But I agree, Eric. You do have to listen. If there's a trade package out there that includes a first-round pick, you got to take it.
Mhm.
So, that's just where the Bears are at this point, cap-stricken, and you got a young quarterback and an aging roster. I mean, you got to play it where you can. So, agreed. We got a final take tonight, guys. Anybody want to take one? A final take?
I talked about Stafford last week, and I can do
right.
it again.
Well, I think we'll pass on that. Eric, you want a final take tonight?
I'm trying to think of who I would talk about or what I would talk about.
I'm also
I'm an off-season guy, so I guess I'll talk about the whole Bears sort of resources situation.
Bang. Final take. Here we go. Eric, take it away.
From listening to Ryan Poles and, how he's going to approach this entire thing, I wouldn't expect Bears fans, you should not be expecting any sort of blockbuster type moves in trades, in free agencies. In free agency, I know we're all thinking Calvin Ridley and that possibility, and it's always a possibility, but I wouldn't bet on it. This feels like it's going to be one of those years where Poles is going to, manage his resources very carefully, sign cheaper free agents, maybe who are younger and have some upside that the coaches can coach up, similar to what Ryan Pace did in 2015, and then see if he can work some deals to add some draft picks, either by trading away certain players that might not fit what they're going to do moving forward, or maybe moving back from the top of the second, later in that round to see if you can acquire some extra picks. I think that's going to be the approach, and it's going to be relying on the scouting staff being able to identify value. And this is what he said: evaluation and valuation, doing good evaluations and finding value in the right players, and then being aggressive in undrafted free agency. That's sort of going to be the approach. It's not fancy, it's not flashy, but it can work if you do it right. And it's worked before for the Bears. I mean, Pace himself showed that he can find value despite not having a first round pick, despite not having a lot of money to spend. So if he can do it, so can Ryan Poles. And he comes from an organization that has done it successfully before. So, don't expect any big moves, but always pay attention to the moves that are being made, because given the strengths of this coaching staff being able to teach and all those other things, there's a strong possibility that we'll end up seeing some of the young guys they bring in that might not have a big name to themselves will end up being big contributors maybe a year or two down the line.
Well said.
There it is. Well said is right. Good show tonight, fellas.
Mm.
Good show tonight, fellas. We touched on a lot of stuff. If you haven't, if you're just tuning in now, we obviously touched on Poles and Eberflus. We heard from Justin Fields, who was made available to talk after the two were introduced on Monday at Hallis Hall. New regime is in place. For me personally, Ryan Poles came off very strong and willing to learn, and the assistant general manager hire, taking reins of his own position. I'm really happy with that hire so far. Eberflus is going to take me some time. I'm going to need to wait and see on the offseason. A lot of coach speak in there, just things that we hear from a lot of NFL coaches. It's not me singling him out. Just going to take some time to get into it. We've been blitzed by some coach speaky coaches here in the city the last couple of years. So that'll take me a little bit of time. And I know it'll take a lot of Bears fans a little bit of time as well. But good thing is they want to surround Justin Fields with talent. We talked about Eberflus and Poles. We talked about the NFL postseason. Bengals are a hell of a story. Going into LA to face Matt Stafford of the Rams Super Bowl Sunday on the 13th. We'll have a show before then. We'll do some prop bets. We'll have some fun with that one. Hopefully a lot less news that week, and we can kind of just have a more of a fun, relaxed show. Tom Brady's done. Retires from the NFL, 22 years. Beat the hell out of the Bears when he had the chance. 105 passer rating, 19 touchdowns, 4 picks. Killed the Bears. Nick Foles, the only quarterback to beat him. Again, we touched on a lot of stuff, and obviously ending with the very heavy news of Brian Flores suing the NFL over racial discrimination, and amongst other things. So a lot happening in the NFL today.
Whirlwind.
Fellas. Glad we were able to recap it all on the show, huh?
No kidding. Yeah, to your Okay, I have a MacBook here and I'm using my work computer, and my Siri thingy keeps popping up. So I don't know if you guys have heard that, but it's been behind me. Okay.
Haven't heard.
No. I was just saying, yeah, definitely glad to recap it. Hopefully, yeah, next week is chiller, but I have a feeling that Flores news is just getting started.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, for the Club Dub podcast, I'm Kevin, Drew, Eric. Thank you guys for tuning in tonight. We appreciate all your questions, comments. Go ahead and give us a follow. You see our Twitter handles in the bottom left-hand corner. Our podcast, we need some more followers, guys. Get us going on that. Give us a follow at the Club Dub podcast, where we're coming to you live on Twitter. If you're finding us on YouTube or Facebook right now, log into Twitter. Go ahead and give us a follow. We tweet out a lot of stuff all the time during the week. If you got more Bears questions, Eric and Drew are going to answer them this week. So we got plenty of stuff that we'll catch you up on the next week of football. Again, hopefully a little bit more chill. But for Eric, Drew, and Kevin, this is the Club Dub podcast presented by SportsMarker.com. Talk to you next week.
And the last thing, the most important piece, is we're going to take the North and never give it back.